everyone? Scott Hansen here from NFL Red Zone. I hope you're checking out 1 hour of 5 Yard Rush, one of the best podcasts on NFL football in the UK.
Hello and good evening and welcome along to the flagship show here at 5 Yard Rush. As I have been of late, I'm Dan Hughes, going to guide you through our Week 18 show, the first real Week 18 I guess the NFL has had. I'm joined as always by Murf. Good evening, Murf. How are you, sir?
Yeah, not doing too bad, thanks, mate. I mean, we were in for a treat yesterday with the football. Unbelievable day of football. I went into the week kind of worried, thinking, well, everything's kind of decided, and you know,
it felt a bit anticlimactic, didn't it?
But yeah, I kind of thought we were just going to roll out. There'd be a couple of good games. I thought the early slate would be poor, and then I thought, well, we'll get the evening slate. It'd be nice. We'll watch a few things. Nothing's really going to get, and then it'll be Sunday Night Football that will decide one playoff spot, and it'll be fine. And then you had all this drama. I mean, it was a great advertisement for why the NFL is so brilliant, why it's such an unbelievable sporting spectacle, because you get scenes like what happened in Sunday Night Football, and you know, that was just magical, and it really delivered. And you know, I think at times this year the NFL season, especially in that early slate of games, it's at the 6 p.m. games here, the 1 p.m. game, have been a little flat. They tended to really not stack the deck too well in those early slates, and I think there's been some times where we've been a bit deprived of some action. Yesterday more than made up for it, and then today as well, just phones going off every 2 minutes. It's Black Monday, so you know, it's great now we're in the playoffs, but sad too because you know, less and less games, no more red zone, but it's all right.
We do get to sit and watch every game now.
That's true.
That's the thing. You can sit and watch every play from every game without interruption now, which is nice. Well, we can watch it on delay or record or skip the adverts the next day because the scheduling now for us over in the UK gets a little bit stupid, to say the least, doesn't it, as fans? So,
it does.
Although we've landed on our feet, our Buccaneers have got the 6 p.m. Sunday slot. I think is the best one we could possibly have hoped for, and probably the last one I think of the year as well. So we need to make the most of that.
Yeah, we'll touch upon who we're playing, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a great weekend.
That's it. And we are joined, as you can probably tell, by another guest here. We have award-winning Amazon best-selling author of the Fantasy Playbook and host of Fantasy Pros podcast, Joe Pisapia. How are you, Joe? Are you good, sir?
I'm doing very well, and thank you for giving me credit for the book that Murf writes. That's really good. I like that. It's excellent. Murf, congratulations on all those best-selling novels you've been writing.
Yeah, thanks. You know, if we're going to swap franchises, I mean... the Black Book is an unbelievable book. We talk about it every year.
I just tease it, man. I'm having fun. It's January, and I'm just happy to be here, man. I'm happy that we made it through. But yeah, guys, thanks for having me. And you know, I thought Week 18 was brilliant. I thought it was fantastically entertaining. You had overtime games all over the place. You had the Jaguars beating the Colts, which still makes me giddy. I just think it's hilarious. I mean, not even beating them, but handing them their lunch. Like, it was awesome. And the fact that I think now that you've only got the one bye for each conference, I think what you're seeing lately with that is there's so many more things in play, which does make this last week of football a little bit more entertaining than it normally does. And because you also have that odd number of games as opposed to the even, I think what we're in store for this past week is what we're going to see going down in the future, where Week 18 almost becomes like this weird play-in week where there's a lot of jockeying for position, all this stuff going on. So the dynamic of going to 17 games instead of 16, the dynamic of only one actual real bye week, and that really meaning a great deal by comparison to all the other teams that don't have one. I think you're going to see a lot more wacky, really entertaining Week 18 football. That's for sure. I at least think that's the trend where it's going. I think it's great for the NFL.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got the Smoke Show just written in saying, "Good day, gentlemen." So lovely to have you join us. Thank you. I agree with you 100%. And I think when we go to 18 games and we have a week 19, because that's going to happen, right? It's going to happen.
Probably.
Not in the next few years, but maybe in the next 10. It will definitely happen because the demand is there. Yep. The supply is there. It's easy to do. I think you're just going to get more and more of these scenarios where you got things playing for. And as you say, the jockeying for position, because it's so important. Like for the Buccaneers yesterday, they were never really likely to get the 2 seed. And then all of a sudden, they get that.
Yeah.
That's an if they win, it's an extra home game. Like the 2 seed's worth playing for. It's not it's not a nothing. It's like, it doesn't matter if you're the 2. It's huge.
Especially when it could be the Rams or the Niners, and that's a long old journey out to the West Coast to East Coast. So to have that at home rather than away is a massive, massive advantage.
Yeah. I mean,
100%.
And then you see some of the permutations that were going into Sunday Night Football, what that meant for the Raiders, and everyone watching this probably knows the results. The fact that the Raiders, have that decision of, well, we can tie and then we can go and play Kansas City, or we can kick this and win it, and we can go and play the Bengals. And you're picking your own fate, which I quite like that. I quite like the fact that you always have something to play for, that you are sizing up your opponents.
And you didn't have that as much. When you had 16 games, all the 8-8s, it was all tiebreakers and things were already kind of done. Now that you have a real, a real official record tiebreaker, it makes a big difference. And I still can't believe the Steelers ended up backing into the playoffs. I mean, it's just, after all of that, after all the nonsense and all the things, it was wild. It was a great finish. And that last game was very entertaining. And, unless you're Brandon Staley, in which case it probably was less entertaining. But he's got plenty of time out now to think about it. For the rest of the
I love that.
Little dad joke.
Yeah. Loved it. I think right now, my one conclusion at the end of the season is someone needs to put Mike Tomlin in the Hall of Fame now. This might be his greatest ever achievement, to take that team with that quarterback who's done. I mean, he's cooked. He's so cooked. I like to think I can probably throw a ball further than Ben Roethlisberger right now. And I'm like, that's not saying much. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, he's got him to another playoff.
Look, Tomlin's a wonderful coach, and Tomlin's also, here's the only thing with Tomlin is I'd love to see him do it without Roethlisberger, and that's the thing. It's he inherited a franchise quarterback, and whatever you think about Ben Roethlisberger, he's been a franchise quarterback. He's a Hall of Fame quarterback, so it's always much more difficult to have a situation where you've got to come in there and start fresh with quarterback, and doesn't matter who that person is. It's very difficult to make those adjustments. It's very difficult to choose the right person and all those things. So he's had a ready-made situation from day one, and I give him credit. He's had to remake it several times, but he's always had the quarterback. I still think he's a Hall of Fame coach anyway. I was actually thinking today about Mike Evans, wondering, I think Mike Evans might be a Hall of Fame wide receiver now. Like, I think we have to start having that conversation. The consistency, what he's done, and, the jabroni quarterbacks that he's played with in his career, and now getting to play with Brady, it makes you wonder, how good could Mike Evans have been had he played with Brady his whole career or something like that? So there's a couple guys I think at the end of this year we have to kind of reevaluate and reestablish and start to think about, how good have these bodies of work been? And I think Tomlin's one of them for sure as a coach, and I think Mike Evans might be one of them as a player.
Yeah, well, I think Mike Evans, I don't think he's that far away now. I think if you'd said to people 2 years ago, you'd have said no. He gets the 7. He breaks the record for the 1,000-yard seasons. He gets the ring. But now it's the touchdowns. He's 75 touchdowns. If he keeps on this pace, I mean, he is on Randy Moss, Terrell Owens pace for touchdowns. He's not going to beat Rice.
He's not that talent. I don't think I would ever want to put him in that conversation. I think he's in that next tier talent now, where you start to think about those other guys in that next grouping, like the number 2 grouping, that like if you want to put Moss and Rice and those guys in the elite, next group, I think Evans, from a statistical standpoint, it's very impressive, and the consistency in which he's been able to do it has been really impressive.
Yeah, but that's my point, is if he plays another 7 years, it gets him into the 150 touchdown club, which only involves those 3 players. If he keeps pace, and he might not. I don't think his body will hold up that long.
Oh, I don't think so.
But I think if he gets 100 touchdowns, which you're looking at 25 more over the next 3-4 seasons, he should do it, you'd expect. Maybe even 5. He gets in with 100 touchdowns, 100%. Because you look at the guys who've got 100 touchdowns, there's not many of those guys who've got there and not made it into the Hall. And then you got the ring, you've got the 8,000-yard seasons if he doesn't do it again. Wouldn't bet against him if Tom Brady comes back of him doing it 9 straight years. Yeah, I think there's a few, like you say, I think there's a few players that have really stood out and changed perspectives this year. But speaking of changing environments, we do have changing environments by the hour with Black Monday.
Black Monday.
Yeah.
And it's not the good one where the shops put everything on sale. That's a Friday, I believe, right?
Yeah, it is. Very good. Very good.
But yeah, Black Monday, notorious. And some teams didn't even wait for Monday this year. They pulled the trigger yesterday. But we've seen head coaches and GMs across the league start to fall foul of this. I think most surprisingly, especially for here, was Brian Flores at the Dolphins. Would you agree, Murf?
Yeah, I would. Oh, well, sorry, Murph, go ahead.
Go.
No, that one was surprising because you saw how well they played in the second half. He had Tua, who's been hurt, right? I mean, so many times this year. He had to go to backup quarterback, and he still got them to play. Like, the guys played for him. So this had to be a situation where him and the GM just didn't get along or see eye to eye, or maybe the organization sees Tua one way and he sees him another. I don't know which is which, but it was a little puzzling. I mean, I thought Flores did a very good job considering what he had to work with, to be honest with you. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I think Flores should be looked at for another job because the measuring stick is, do the guys play for you? And I think the answer for Flores is yeah. I mean, last year too. That team gets up to play for that dude.
Yeah, I would say this twofold. First of all, that record is a false record for me because the first half of the season they have one of the hardest schedules, and then the second half of the season they have the easiest schedule. They didn't beat many, if any, good teams. They lost to the Jags in London. But I think for me, Stephen Ross gave you everything that you needed to know, and that is communication and organizationally he didn't fit. It wasn't about results. It wasn't about the coaching. It was about behind the scenes, as you said, not getting on with the GM. I don't think he got on with the quarterback. The fact that Tua wasn't a captain this year suggests to me that there was a lot of things going on behind the scenes, whether that was the coach or there was a disagreement between the two. I think it was very fractured at times, that relationship. There's been rumblings of fracturedness with the defense that he was calling. I think he's one of those that he'll get a good number of players to play for him, and I think some players will just flat out won't put up with it, almost like the Belichickian kind of approach, because that's what he's come from. The problem you have is you've got an owner who doesn't like negative press, who's not going to stand there and have the team scrutinized in the way that it does, which is why he makes the changes so frequently. He loves it when it's all positive, but Stephen Ross is not going to put up with coaching BS, basically, where, Flores isn't giving answers. The whole dual offensive coordinator business was weird. The fact that he didn't name who was calling plays, like, why does that need to be a secret? Why does it matter who calls the plays? Like, why is that proprietary information that's so bad that we can't tell anyone who's calling, who is the one speaking into the mic and calling the play? Like, why does that matter? Why is that the hill that you're going to die on as a coach?
I don't mind that not knowing, because people have their favoritisms and tendencies. So why would you declare it? Keep it back.
Because you're
everything's about analytics and studying, and if Mr. Offensive Coordinator actually runs 96% of the time on 3rd and 2, then you'd play to that. So why not keep it a secret?
But that's all there. The play,
but you don't know who's calling the plays.
Yeah, but it's just who is physically calling the plays. They know the plays being run. They're all there on tape. You gain no advantage by it's basically saying there's just a lot of things that happen. I'm not surprised they moved on. I'm surprised. I'm not shocked. I think that's probably the way. But
he'll walk into another job, right? Head coach, defensive coordinator somewhere. At least a defensive coordinator role.
Flores will get a defensive coordinator job, I think.
At least.
I think the Patriots
openings.
I mean, the Patriots make the most sense to go back.
It wouldn't be shocking to see him go back there. No, not at all. But yeah, I've also heard, and this is from someone that I know who covers the team, and one of those kind of situations, that the Tua entourage is a lot to deal with. And apparently, that there's some friction there. And I'd heard that back in November. I'd had that conversation with the person where they were talking about that. And it was kind of around the trade deadline stuff where we were talking about, like, I wonder when apparently that was a big thing. Now, I don't know who it rubbed the wrong way the most. Like, again, I don't know if it's the coach or the GM, but Tua's entourage of people and his, his approach to things sometimes apparently rubbed some people the wrong way, which is why the Deshaun Watson conversations were happening in the first place, which is why they were kicking the tires on all those things in the offseason and in the season. So, when at the end of the day, when you see stuff like that, whenever you see trade rumors, whenever you see things like that in an organization, you know people aren't on the same page, or you know that something is off there. So again, like you said, you probably put it best, Murphy. It's surprising, but it's not shocking at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see where he ends up. There's a lot of jobs out there, as we're going to cover in a second.
Go through him in a sec, yeah.
It wouldn't shock me if he's going to get an interview at a couple of those, but we'll see where he ends up.
Fine. So if that one came as a surprise, one that probably came as much less of a surprise was Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace leaving their roles as Bears head coach and GM. Not shocked by that one, are you, Joe?
No, I mean, none of the rest of them shocked me. I mean, to be honest, I think we all expected the rest of them, right? I mean, Matt Nagy, it's a fall from grace for Nagy, who that first year it looked like, oh, we're building something, and Trubisky and all this stuff, and then it just completely just nosedived ever since. And I think he also did himself a disservice. Had he just played Fields all year, had he just committed to that, I feel like he might be in a different position, because I think you leave the season with questions as opposed to if Fields had played, even if he played mediocre and he had played the entire season, and some of it's on Fields, I'm sure too, but had it all come together, at least maybe, just maybe, they would have said, all right, you know what, maybe things are trending in the right direction here. And you saw progress, but you didn't see anything because Fields wasn't on the field enough, especially in the first half of the season. I mean, he wasn't there. So I don't know. I mean, it's a bizarre set of circumstances. If you're Nagy, I think he was just trying to hold it together, trying to get a couple W's, but I don't think that was the right mindset. I think the mindset is develop the young quarterback, show progress in the right direction. You're probably not competing in that division anyway. But alas, he tried to squeak out some extra wins with Andy Dalton, and I think he's the worse off because of it.
Yeah, I just think it's as you say, it's a strange mindset. You've paid Dalton when you probably didn't have to, because you got Foles there. And to be honest, I don't think there's a big market for Dalton. I think you could have waited until the draft. Then you get Fields. And then you're like, okay, right, we've got this quarterback. And I get not starting in week 1, week 2. I don't have a problem sitting there for 3 or 4 games, getting up to speed, play the veteran. I think that is a fine approach. I don't have an issue with that. I think, as you say, once you're getting into week 5, week 6, week 7, and you've traded up to get this guy, you're basically saying he's the franchise. You're not going to win the division anyway. No one's expecting you. I don't think the objective was playoffs or you're out. I think you're at the point where you're thinking, well, okay, just put the guy on the field,
right,
and see what he does. But the coaching to fail. I mean, Justin Fields was in situations that he could not play in. He wasn't ready. He wasn't prepared. The offensive line was at times abysmal. The play calling was abject. It was, everything was just a mess. And they looked better under Dalton, only because Dalton called audibles and he made reads, and he did what a wily veteran does, is he makes plays out of nothing. Not enough to make them a good team, but he got some W's. And I think it's no loss. The only loss for me is, I had Matt Nagy's obvious corner in the offseason or during the season where I could quote stupid things that Matt Nagy would say, and that's gone. So I've lost 2 of my comedy bits. Yeah,
don't worry.
Matt Nagy's obvious corner and Dave Gettleman being a GM are big losses to me personally, because there was a lot of material I got out of that, and that's material I'm never going to get again from those guys. So I think good riddance. Ryan Pace again, I think I'm not shocked he's gone. I think the only thing is, I think they should have got rid of him last year. I don't know why you give him the power to draft a new quarterback and then sack him a year later. Without a first-round pick for a new GM. But yeah, I think we'll see what happens. But I don't think that's a bad job, I look at the jobs available and I think it's not the best, but it's certainly not the worst. I look at that job and think there's enough pieces there that would make me...
Well, you have a young franchise quarterback, theoretically. So that makes it appealing. It's not as appealing as the Vikings, because the Vikings you can get now. But, I still think that the Jaguars are oddly appealing, because you have an owner that is going to be okay spending money. And you have a young franchise quarterback who I still think has all the future in the world ahead of him. So buy now on Trevor Lawrence wherever you can, because it's only going to get better from here.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I'm not as high on you on the Jags job, just because I just think you need a GM
high on
there.
Trevor Lawrence. That's fair enough. That when you either have the quarterback or you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have to tell you this. You watch the Buccaneers your whole life, right? You either have the, and I'm a Patriots fan, right? So you either have the quarterback or you don't. And for the better part of the last 30 years, my team has had a quarterback, whether it be Drew Bledsoe, whether it be Tom Brady, or whether it be Mac Jones now, who I think is pretty good. But in this league, it's the haves and have-nots. So the jobs where you have a quarterback situation that you could build on already is great. And, the trick is, though, if you come into the Vikings, does a new regime want to tear it all down? Does a GM just want to say, no, you know what, this isn't working? Or do they look at it as saying, hey, Aaron Rodgers might leave, and you know what, we got the Bears in a rebuild, the Lions are still the Lions. There's every reason to believe that you could go in there with the right strategy and win. And the only reason I think that Zimmer's gone is because Zimmer's a defensive guy, and at the end of the day, the defense failed last year, and everyone gave him a pass because of COVID, because the building wasn't full, and there was a big building advantage and all that stuff. And this year, it was inconsistent again. It was bad for the most part. So at the end of the day, you get hired and fired for the same reason, right? You get hired because you're a great defensive mind, but if the defense doesn't play, you get fired for the same reason too.
100%. And I think, it's no shock. I mean, people talking about Spielman going at the Vikings is a shock because he's been there for so long. I think at the end of the day, you need to change. He's been there 16 years. He's been the GM for 10. Yeah, okay, you got to the NFC title game a couple of years ago, but that roster's loaded. You look at that roster now and you think any coach, that for me is the prime job right now, because any coach can go in there and buy themselves the next 3 or 4 years by getting into the playoffs next year with that roster, and it wouldn't take a lot. Couple of defensive picks, maybe some free agency signing on the defensive side of the ball. What do you need to do on the offensive side of the ball? Maybe an offensive line piece, maybe a tight end. That's about all you need. You don't need any receivers. You don't need a quarterback. Kirk Cousins is on there for the next year. You can kick that quarterback problem down the road for another year and decide what you want to do with the Cousins scenario. And people don't like Cousins, and that's fine. But Kirk Cousins is better than anybody that's going to be on free agency this year, and he's better than anyone that's going to be available in the draft this year. And if you want to win now, he's not going to cost you. So he's not going to win you the Super Bowl.
Take an offensive head coach and then look for someone like a Flores or a Fangio to come in as a defensive coordinator to focus on that separately?
It depends if they want to go experienced or if they want to go for a rookie head coach. So I would say that, for me, if I'm Jacksonville, Vic Fangio should be hired at the defensive coordinator position at all costs. You spend whatever money it takes to go and get Vic Fangio, if you're Jacksonville, and you go and get an inspiring young head coach, whether that's Bieniemy, whether that's Leftwich, whether that's, I'd go and get one of those guys. With Fangio as your DC, almost like the whole Sean McVay and Wade Phillips argument. You bring some balance and stability and say, I've got that side of the ball. Don't worry about that. You just look after your side of the ball and just get them playing, build a culture together. Vic Fangio's been in the league a long time. It's a shame what happened to him, but I think if I'm the Vikings, I mean, to me, the Vikings is the job I think everyone should go for. I think it's the one that they'll probably hire first, and then I think we'll see what happens. But I mean, I don't know. I don't know who they go with. I mean, it'd be interesting to see if they hire someone like Jim Caldwell. I think that would be a mistake. I think they're better off going young, but we'll see what happens. Eric Bieniemy would not be a bad fit in Minnesota. I think that would suit them quite nicely. That's who I would pick if I was going to be the GM, but it's not down to me. Joe, what would you do?
For which team? For the Vikings? I wouldn't hate if it was Caldwell. I think Jim Caldwell's a good football man. And I think he, kind of got a raw end of the last situation he was in. But Bieniemy and Byron Leftwich, I think, are the two big prizes out there from an offensive standpoint. I think both of those guys deserve a look. And I think, especially, with the league losing another African-American head coach in Brian Flores, you see a lot of teams are going to be looking at that, and the NFL is going to be looking at that too. But, I'm always of the mind of the best person should get the job. It doesn't matter what it is. But at the same time, I think in the last 2 years, especially last year too, how Bieniemy didn't get nearly as many interviews as other people is very puzzling to me. Because I think he's done a very good job. And I think and it's funny because now year over year, the bloom is off the rose a little bit with with the Kansas City Chiefs offense a little bit, right? Big difference. And it begs to differ. Well, is that Bieniemy's fault or is that Mahomes growing into being Mahomes and wanting to do things always his way, possibly. You don't know the ins and outs of all these teams. And to me personally, football is a very simple thing. It's either you have the personnel and then you have the right personality to lead them, or you don't. And it's just, I've seen it happen a lot of times, and it doesn't matter if it's, Pee-wee football, or if it's all the way up to high school or college or the NFL level. You have to have a coach who people are going to buy into and play for, which is very important, which is why I thought, like, the Lions this year, for all of the nonsense of the Lions have no quit in them. They really don't. It's Dan Campbell, and I was the biggest guy making fun of Dan Campbell at the press conference and nonsense. I really did. But you know what? Those guys play for him. Like, they show up and they compete, and I think that's really impressive. And to answer Jack's question here, I don't think Joe Judge is going to have a job. I think Gettleman is retired, and whoever the next GM comes in, the GM will come in and hire his own coach, and Joe Judge will not be there. I would be shocked, because that's the other thing. Like, there's a guy where I don't think the guys are playing for him, and I think that's a perfect example of it.
I mean, you look at how they played the Giants the last 6 weeks of the season. They gave up. I would
give up too if Jake Fromm was playing quarterback, but at the same time, it's just, it's just terrible. It's just the whole thing just feels flat, and they've been so bad for so long, and the Giants aren't used to that. The Giants, right now, if I told you could have the future of the Giants or the Jets, which one would you prove?
I mean, you would obviously pick the Jets because of what they do have.
Think about what you just said. You'd obviously pick the Jets over the Giants right now. That's a stunning set of circumstances, I think.
It really is. But the thing with the Giants, and this sums up them, I mean, first of all, they've not drafted well over the last few years. But then you look at the situation, who goes into the market for a backup quarterback and says, Mike Glennon, he's our guy. He's the guy that we're going to have. And we're going to, you could have had Gardner Minshew. You could have had, I mean, I know Blake Bortles is a bit of a comical joke, but Blake Bortles can sort of play. Mike Glennon can't play. He hasn't won a game in 7 years in the NFL.
Yeah, I don't. He must be an awesome guy. He must be just like the best. Like, that's the thing. At the end of the day, a lot of these backup quarterbacks who stick around the league for 10, 15 years, you got to worry about. This guy just must be amazing. He's an amazing guy to be around. You show up in your locker room and like your locker's all cleaned out, and he's got like air fresheners in the lockers. He's taking all the mud out of your cleats. He leaves you little candies on top of your stool or something like that before you sit down. You go, oh, look at this little chocolate there for my. Oh, how nice! Like, I can't imagine, but it's stunning. The best job in the NFL is backup quarterback for sure.
Yeah, there's definitely been, if you look at the Buccaneers depth chart, there's a guy that has been the backup quarterback there. Well, not even the backup, the backup to the backup, Ryan Griffin. Ryan Griffin's been paid by the Buccaneers organization for 7 consecutive years. I think he's played about 8 snaps in the NFL. He's had a very
paid.
Yeah, and he's had a lovely career. Playing a couple of preseason games and filling up water bottles. I mean, what a lovely job.
Cracking tan and bank balance to go with it, I'm sure.
I mean, I think he's made something in the region of like $15 million. We're all in the wrong industry.
We are.
Moving on to...
where do you want to go? Anthony Lynn, or do you want to go to last weekend? What happened?
I mean, let's skip Anthony Lynn. He's gone. He's been fired for the second consecutive cycle. I expect him to go back to college. Do you think anything different, Joe?
For Anthony Lynn?
Yeah.
Yep.
No, I mean, he'll get a job somewhere. There's enough jobs opening somewhere. He'll work. But Anthony Lynn, again, very good man. Good football coach, I think. But, look, maybe it is a college situation or something like that. There's certainly enough college openings right now. That's for damn sure. But the tricky thing, too, is, there used to be a once upon a time where you'd be looking to the college ranks for the next NFL coaches. And that's something that happened in the 80s and into the 90s a bit. But just really just not a thing anymore. There seem to be exclusive now. It's like they come from other coordinator positions, and that's pretty much it right now. And the guys and unfortunately the Urban Meyer experiment only could have made that situation worse, I think. So.
Well, to be honest, I don't profess to claim that I know Urban Meyer's logic or way of working well, but having watched Urban Meyer teams, especially being at Florida, he's not a coach. He's not like people sit there and go, he's an amazing coach. No. The guy he's a great recruiter. He recruits great players and then hires coaches underneath him to go ahead and build a team, and then he produces results on the field. That's what he does. He produces results from outstanding players, some of the best players in the country. He is very good at recruiting players and getting them to buy into something at an early stage. But the man's a piece of work, and I'm glad he's
the only college coach that I think there's this talk about coming back to the NFL, I guess, at the minute is Jim Harbaugh. Can you see him landing anywhere?
I think it would be shocking for him to leave. I think he's got so much capital now.
Yeah.
Having beaten Ohio State and having made it to the national having made it not the national championship, but made it to the college football playoffs, I think is astounding. Yeah. And the problem is if you're not an SEC team, once those other teams come in there, they get their doors blown off typically. I mean, Cincinnati was a very good football team. There's not in the same class. The same thing. Michigan's a good football team. It's not in the same class. So it's a very difficult thing to see that happen. Again, the most troubling thing with the Urban Meyer stuff is that if he was doing it at this level, you had to imagine where these kids were on scholarships, scared out of their minds to do anything wrong for this guy. And you got to imagine what kind of abuses of his power have been going on for decades. And I think that's the thing that's most upsetting to me is, if he was doing that stuff to professional athletes, you can only imagine what he was doing to 19, 20-year-old kids. Yeah. And I think that to me is appalling. And I'm actually frankly surprised that more stories haven't come out about him.
But they will.
Players. I'm sure they will over time here, but that was, I think we all kind of threw our hands up and went, well, I guess we'll see, right? I mean, this guy's got such a reputation, but I mean, the last guy that I think he had a shot was Saban, and Saban, I think, just didn't like the NFL. Like, I think if Nick Saban had stayed in the NFL would have been better for it. I mean, Nick Saban's a great football coach. And Nick Saban was around in the NFL for years. I mean, he was on Belichick's staff with the Browns. I mean, he was all over the place, so he was an NFL guy who happened to be a very successful college football coach. But Saban's the one guy who probably would have been able to buck that trend. But at the end of the day, it was, it's very tempting to say, here are the keys to the castle, as opposed to being a head coach in the NFL, where you don't have that.
And I think you've hit the nail on the head there, because when you're ahead of a college program, you get everything. You get the ability to do so many different things. Your job is so diverse. It's not just coaching. It's the recruitment side. Oh, yeah. It's building a sustainable play. And the money's phenomenal. The money's better than it is in the NFL. It just is.
Stability, the money, the control. I think for a guy like Saban, it's about the control. The same thing with Parcells. It was about the control. For Belichick, to a certain extent, it was about the control. The great 100%. Coaches, they want to have the control, and I don't blame them.
And the only college coach in the last 5-6 years that's come out and done half a good job is Cliff Kingsbury, and actually he wasn't that great a college coach.
He was. You know what? I gotta say, it's at times not a great NFL coach either. I mean, he's kind of been saved at the end, but he was looking real dicey there for a couple of weeks. And the one guy to me that Matt Rule came in like a house on fire, and I thought at the beginning of this year I was like, wow, Matt Rule's really got this thing going here. And I'm surprised that he held on to his job, because I thought that was a team that fell apart at the seams. And I don't know where the hell the direction of that football team is going. I did not like his demeanor in the press conferences either. I thought it was a lot of unprofessional stuff that he was doing there. I'm just shocked. And I know it was a very frustrating year, and everybody knows my thoughts about Cam Newton, and I thought it was a joke to begin with, and I was laughing when they brought him back, and, sure enough, 2 weeks later, he was laughing again. I don't get it. I don't get why, at the end of the day, Matt Rule was able to survive letting go Joe Brady, it was somehow Joe Brady's fault. Like, I don't understand. Like, the whole thing falls apart. I don't know, man. Matt Rule, I think, is on thin ice. I'm shocked that he kept his job so far.
I mean, there was the report that came out that David Tepper is not happy. They said they were always going to bring him back and let him have the start of the year. I just think because they're a young squad. I think that's the only thing that saved him. I think that's the only thing that saved him.
But I'll ask you this question, Murf. Do you think that the Carolina Panthers are better positioned this year or last year? Like, I think they took a step backwards. I think after last season, this time last year, I felt better about the Panthers than I do this time in 2022. And I don't think anybody could say differently.
I agree, but then the big part of that is that Teddy Bridgewater under center, who is at least competent. Sam Darnold has proven that he's not competent.
I know.
He shouldn't be in the position. Cam Newton isn't good enough. PJ Walker, they're bringing back. I would have just given the job to PJ Walker and just seen what he can do. You know what you're getting with Darnold. You know what you're getting with Newton. I don't know. You just didn't roll with PJ Walker and just say, hey, see what happens. I think they've got some areas where they need to work on. in that franchise. But the way I look at them is they're an arrow up team. I think they can if they can get that quarterback position sorted, and see that's the team that should have signed Gardner Minshew last year. I look at teams and think, why didn't you sign him? Like, why he ended up in Philadelphia? Like, I'm just sitting there thinking, you can get a quarterback in there, and I think with the roster that they've got, they can make some moves because the rest of that division's pretty poor, other than the Bucs. So you're not going to beat the Bucs next year, fine. The Saints, who knows what's going to happen with the Saints next year? Who knows? And then you've got the Falcons. Well, they're not going anywhere because they got Matt Ryan under center. I just think if you get a half decent quarterback in there, I think they could trend up. But then I think if they start less than 500 over the first 6 games, he'll be gone. I think he's got the shortest leash. I think he's probably got the hottest seat in the NFL come next season because Tepper won't put up with it.
Fair enough. So week 8, we touched on it a bit earlier. Week 18 even, we touched on it a bit earlier. Can somebody please explain to me what happened to the Indianapolis Colts and why they find themselves sat at home now?
I wish I had an answer.
Anybody?
You?
I got a couple. One, they've not won there in 7 years. And they're a divisional rival, so they play every year. 2, Carson Wentz.
I think you can blame some of it on Carson Wentz. And Frank Reich's a really good
delegator.
No, he's a good football coach, Frank Reich.
He is.
I don't know. I mean, it's funny. Some teams just seem to have each other's number, and the Jaguars are one of those teams that seem to have the number. I don't know why. But, yeah, it's very puzzling for sure.
It's a perfect storm, isn't it? I think you looked at the Jags yesterday, and I think they just decided, those players just decided that they'd had enough. They just had enough of sucking. They'd had enough.
I will say across the league, divisional games in week 18 has to stay.
Yeah.
Because if that was any other game, as good as the Colts were and as bad as the Jags were, that game gets folded. It was a divisional aspect. Same with the Chargers and Raiders game and things like that. And that's what made those games have that extra edge to them, was the fact of the divisional games.
And I think you could see it in Trevor Lawrence, like when he's talking to the press yesterday. You can just see that they all meant business yesterday. They all decided, they all got together and went, this has been poor, but you're only as good as your last football game. If you go out and win the last game of the season, you got the number 1 pick in the draft. It's a pretty good offseason. Like it is. You've got that to build on. People will look at that last game as a fan base and go, there's something. As you say, the Trevor Lawrence effect, you've got all of that now. I think... But I think the Colts came in half-baked. I think they thought, we'll steamroll them. I think they got a little arrogant. They didn't play with any urgency when they got behind. And the lead got too big. And they only started to play when the game was out of sight. If they turned up and did what they did early in the second half, towards the end of the first half, they might have had a chance.
I just think being a Jags fan feels like being an average golfer right now. It's been dreadful all year. You birdie the 18th and you get all this hope about the next round to come again, and it's going to go back to square one when you start on the first again next year, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a strange one, but we'll see what happens with them. But yeah, oh well, the Colts go home, and we get the pleasure of having the Steelers in the playoffs, so that's always great. I enjoy having the Steelers in the playoffs to go out in the first round.
But they got the unenviable task of heading into Arrowhead as well. I know it feels like Big Ben's final good hurrah is going on week after week after week at the minute. We had his last home game, and we had his last game, and now we've got another last game to look forward to. So he's certainly making it last as long as he can. So another really good thing to come out of the weekend is the fact that Sean McVeigh is now defeatable once he's leading at halftime, which I'm sure everybody is really pleased about because they no longer have to hear about this amazing record he has.
Yeah. Finally. I think George Kittle said it best yesterday in his press conference where he talked about he called it would be a body bag game. It would be heavy on offense and defense, and it was. And then the Rams put that as a quote, and they used it as motivation. And then, he was getting it chirped in his ear, and he said, "A lot of time left on that clock, boys." And then him and Jimmy Garoppolo and co all turned up, and I think the 49ers are in a bit of a sticky situation now because, You got to roll with Jimmy G next week, right, Joe? You got to roll with Jimmy G.
You have to. I mean, I give Garoppolo a lot of credit for playing hurt and coming away with another W against Sean McVay. I mean, boy wonder Sean McVay. I gotta tell you, that's another one where this is very puzzling. I know he's got an incredible mind for football. I just wonder at a certain point too, in terms of being a head coach, if he's somebody who's better off being an offensive coordinator than a head coach. I just wonder. I don't know if he's got the discipline for the head coaching thing, because I don't think you can let the San Francisco 49ers beat you at home in this situation. I just don't. I think it's 6 in a row now, right? It was 5 going in. I don't know. Mm-hmm. It's very appalling to me that you can have that happen to you. And I know there's no home field advantage in LA. I get all those things, all that stuff. But from a 49ers standpoint, yeah, I mean, Garoppolo deserves the shot to play. I think Garoppolo will be playing somewhere next year else, not named San Francisco. And I think he'll be one of the retread guys. And you're going to see a lot of them because it's not a strong quarterback class. You're going to have Corral. You're going to have Ritter. You're going to have Pickett. Maybe 1 or 2 other guys will, all of a sudden become the scouting darlings. But it's not nearly the same quarterback class as it was last year. And you have a lot of older guys kind of aging out or retiring or moving on. So it's going to be musical chairs. It's going to be fascinating. But you're going to see Minshew, I think, get a shot at a starting job. I think Trubisky's going to get retreaded somewhere. I think you're going to see a lot of things next year that are going to blow your mind at the quarterback position. It's going to be wacky. And I also think Davis Mills is going to stick in the Texans, too. I really do.
I love Davis Mills.
Me too. He won me a lot of money yesterday.
Yeah, I love Davis Mills. Do share. How did he win you a lot of money yesterday?
Well, DraftKings is the millionaire maker. It was my best finish I've ever had in that contest. I finished 300, number 300 overall. I've never finished that high before in that contest. On a FanDuel one, I've gotten closer than that sometimes, but never on the DK one. And Davis Mills, 1.7% rostered. And I only played one lineup in that bad boy because I figure, what's the difference? So I played one lineup, and it had Mills, and it had Singletary, and it had a lot of good things in it. It had Diggs. And, but Mills was just like, look at it. As soon as they got behind in that game, I went, perfect. I was like, excellent. Let's go. This is the perfect scenario because I saw them losing in the second quarter by like 2 touchdowns and a field goal or something. At one point, I was like, well, nothing but to throw the ball now. So, but I think, like I said, it's going to be a really weird offseason when it comes to the quarterback position because you're seeing a changing of the guard and you're seeing a lot of movement and you're seeing the combination of a lot of other young quarterbacks too that people are either going to give up on real quick or, they're going to ride out, and it's going to be very different next year than it was even this year or the year before.
So let me ask you this. You're the quarterback guy, right? Who I go to for quarterback advice.
Quarterback whisperer.
We look at who effectively are in play. Mm-hmm. Jameis Winston, Gardner Minshew. They're probably like
Minshew's a fascinating guy if you gave him a team to play with.
Yeah, I mean
that's how I feel about Minshew. I don't think Minshew's great. I think Minshew's good, but I think Minshew's a personality that I think guys want to play with and for. And that I keep going back to that same theme in the show today, but that's important. And I feel like if you dropped him into Pittsburgh, if you dropped him into one of these kind of places where you have him, here's a great running back and a great wide receiving core or whatever, different situations maybe, you could see success out of somebody like that. I keep coming back to Trubisky because he had such a good preseason for Buffalo and all the negativity around Matt Nagy and everything. I think somebody's going to be real interested in him because he said all the right things and he performed well in the preseason. He's still very young. And I think someone's going to say, well, there's a project. The Sam Darnold experiment didn't work out, so I think that experiment's done. Winston, I think, is another one too. I mean, what do the Saints do? I don't think you can win a championship with Taysom Hill playing quarterback. I just don't. Peyton's got a lot of soul searching to do also there. And I don't know if Winston's going to be a highly regarded guy either. I think he had his opportunity this year, and I don't think he made the most of it, unfortunately.
Well, he got hurt.
I know. I can't put it on him, but the NFL doesn't care.
No.
He didn't make the most of it, not because it was his fault necessarily, although he wasn't perfect when he played either. But he just, if you're not on the field, they can't evaluate you at the end of the day, and that stinks. But
I think it's going to be an interesting cycle. I think there's a few QBs knocking around who are going to be, you talked about Jimmy Garoppolo, he's available for trade.
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers could effectively move, although why he'd move to Denver, I have no idea. Everyone keeps talking about
Wouldn't it be something if he took LaFleur with him?
I can't see that. I think he'd take Hackett with him.
I mean, who knows?
He loves Hackett. I mean, Nathaniel Hackett, when Nathaniel Hackett went for a head coaching job last year, he called up the team that he was going for an interview with and gave him a personal letter of recommendation. Like, he went off his back and did that. Like, it's not an Aaron Rodgers thing to do. Like,
Aaron Rodgers will play somewhere else because every great quarterback does. It's very hard to find the great quarterback, especially the all-time great ones. Dan Marino is the only one off the top of my head that I remember not going somewhere else, right?
Aikman?
Well, Aikman's career got cut a little short. And I don't think I put Troy quite in that category of Marino, Montana,
Elway?
Manning, Brady. Elway's a good one. Elway's the other one. You're right. Elway did not. He could have, but he chose not to. I think that was out there. There were teams that actually wanted him, and he was like, no, I'm just going to end on a high note kind of situation. But most of them do, and I could see Rodgers doing that. I mean, I think Rodgers retires or plays somewhere else. I don't think he comes back for the Packers next year.
No, I'm with you on that one 100%.
Fine. So, go on, Muff.
I was going to say, what do you make of this playoffs then, in terms of, in fact, before we do that, prop bets for this week? I don't know if you've had a chance to look yet. Maybe it's a bit early. But with these lineups, you've got wild card round coming on now with the AFC and the NFC. I mean, there's some tasty fixtures. What are your sort of thoughts on this playoff schedule for next week? Super wild card weekend, as they keep rubbing it in our faces and telling us that it's.
Well, it's super for us. I mean, we are the major market where they do play. I mean, just saying they do. I mean, some really good football games. I mean, I think there's always that handle where you feel like you know which way they're going to go. I would not be surprised so far. Like, the first one that popped to me right away was, I think San Fran can go in there and beat Dallas. And that was the first one that jumped off the page to me. I feel very confident that Tampa will take care of their business. I feel confident that Kansas City will take care of their business because I think at the end of the day, Pittsburgh's just a little outgunned. And I think Cincinnati's going to take care of their business. Cincinnati, let me tell you, man, those Bengals are for real. Joe Burrow's super for real, man. I love Joe Burrow. I love the swagger. I loved him in college. People didn't think, they said, well, he's a one-year wonder, and then he looked real good in the pros. He hurt his knee and he came back. I don't know, man. I mean, the Las Vegas story is a great one, but I don't think they have the firepower to keep up with Cincinnati. I just don't. Where they starts to get a little dicier is when you get to those other games. New England and Buffalo, is the third time they're matching up. Theoretically, Buffalo should beat them. Like, they really should. But, even that last game, there was a couple moments where the Bills really gave the Patriots opportunities. And this was the game in New England. And they didn't make the most of them. And the Patriots haven't looked good here in the last month of the season. There's no doubt about that. They haven't looked as good, that's for sure. So Buffalo should handle their business, but the San Fran game, that one to me is the one that stands out. And then Arizona and the Rams, I mean, flip a coin. I mean, both these teams drive me crazy. I mean, none of them play as well as they should. In theory, it should be the Rams, but it would not shock me if the Cardinals ended up winning this football game. Not shock me in the least.
Well, I think both teams have kind of just dropped off, haven't they? Both teams have kind of fallen apart. I mean, you've got two quarterbacks that are playing miles below where they were at the start of the season in Stafford and Murray. I think both quarterbacks have been average at best. I think it's probably being a bit kind down the stretch here. I don't think teams are going to be overly worried about them. Famous last words. One of them's going to end up turning up and going the NFC title game or even the Super Bowl. But I just think, that's the game I'm probably the least interested in, believe it or not, because I just think they're two teams that, if the season's 2 weeks longer, they don't get in. Neither of them.
I think they're two teams that would be glad to be playing each other because they are both teams that have limped over the line, and both actually will fancy this as a chance to right the ship and actually try and build that momentum into the other rounds if they can get through this one.
Not big travel either. Arizona and LA, it's not a million miles to go. It's not too bad, and both playing in the heat. So,
these teams both have a ton of talent on them. The problem is their execution at times is just stunningly inconsistent. Yeah, and that's the weird part, and that's what they're in because of their talent, but they're on the fringe because they haven't played good football, and that's the thing. They keep eking out a couple victories here and there, and not looking good down the stretch. And look, one good game can change all that, and all of a sudden the momentum goes. But of all the teams that have momentum right now, You know, you would think Dallas has a little bit of momentum because the defense has played so well, but again, like San Fran, I feel like is going to go into that building and beat them for some reason. I don't know why I think that. I don't want that to happen. I'd rather see the Cowboys in it. I don't like the Cowboys, but I think that's going to happen. And Cincinnati, I'm rooting for personally to go far. I'd love to see that team kind of shock a lot of people. I think that would be very fun.
So I'm on the complete other side of that. I really want the Raiders to win.
You want the, you know,
here's why I want the Raiders to win, because they've got an interim head coach
who's done a phenomenal job. How the hell are they in the playoffs? I don't know.
Which is amazing. You know, their coach gets fired because somebody weaponized emails from 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years ago, whenever those emails ended up coming to light.
Well, in all fairness, somebody wrote stupid emails 3 or 4 years ago.
I completely agree. And listen, I'm not trying to defend John Gruden because John Gruden is a piece of work. He can go on the Urban Meyer
He's a piece of something.
Yeah. And he can join Urban Meyer in that little corner of people we don't ever want to see in the NFL again. But I still think that the timing of that and everything punished an organization that didn't deserve to be punished the way it did. And they've had to really come through some pretty, the Ruggs thing. You know, they've had a couple of players who have done stupid things. Yes, you can point to that saying organizationally, or you can point to that and say that's kids in Vegas being silly and not following the rules or whatever. You've got, you know, so many different things, people writing off Derek Carr every week, who's done a phenomenal job this year, really. And you know, he's playing his number one receiver is Hunter Renfrow, who was drafted. Where was he? I don't even know where he was drafted in the NFL draft. I mean, I just think what the Raiders are doing is cool. They've won 4 straight. They play tough. They're not one of those teams that are the most skillful. They're not one of the teams that are the most passionate, but they're just one of those teams that just get it done. They win ugly. They're like a throwback to those 70s John Madden teams, where they just get it done. They just get it done. There's no moaning. There's no complaining.
Those John Madden teams had a lot more talent, though.
They defense. Did 100%. 100% they did. But I'm just saying, I just think the Raiders are a cool story. I'd like them.
They are.
But I love the Bengals as well. Like, it's a tough one, but I've got this sneaky suspicion that I just think the Raiders are going to shock the world this weekend. I really believe that they're just going to pull something out. Derek Carr's going to show the world.
Murf and I are going to be texting during that game. I can sense it right now.
100%. I'm excited for the Raiders. I really am. I think great franchise. It's great. In fact, you know what? It's great to see both those teams in the playoffs after such a long time. I mean, it's not quite as long for the Raiders. It's only been about 5 years, but
the NFL should be a little worried, by the way, because the Patriots are a year ahead of schedule. They should not be in the playoffs this year with a rookie quarterback, and they are, and they have cap room next year. And if they add Michael Thomas, or if they add a Calvin Ridley, or somebody like that, kind of weapon,
Devonta Adams, if he doesn't get tagged,
Adams is going to get franchise tagged. But there's also the argument that if Rodgers leaves, blow up the whole thing and just start fresh. Why bother? Mm-hmm. They're going to give him something else to work with next year. And when he has that, with the run game they have currently in that defense, look, they're ahead. Like I said, they're a year ahead of schedule right now, and they're not going to win in Buffalo. I don't think. I think it's possible, but I think unlikely. But just the fact that they got there, I think the NFL should be really like just looking around at each other going, how the hell did we let this happen again? Because that's what it feels like right now.
You know, the 49ers should have taken Mac Jones at 3, and this wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, right? You would think. And you know what the funniest part is? I mean, I like Mac Jones as a quarterback. He did a great job at Alabama. But it's specifically in New England where he fits perfectly because they play a certain brand of offense. That's about timing. It's about getting rid of the ball in the right spot at the right time. And it's not a lot of quarterbacks in that class can do what he does, but he can't do anything that, you know, some of the things that Trevor Lawrence can do, and he certainly can't do some things that Trey Lance can do either. So raw quarterback potential, I had Lawrence at 1, Lance at 2, and then I had Fields at 3, and then I had Wilson at 4, and I had Mac Jones at 5. But at the end of the day, you know, which one of those guys is in the playoffs? Mac Jones starting. Don't give me Trey Lance because he's not the quarterback. He's just the backup still.
That was weird. I had Jones at 2. I really did. I just felt intelligence-wise, I just felt that he would need a scheme to be built around him.
He would have done well in that offense too. You know, most likely.
I just think he was the most ready. He has the most ability. He's not phased by anything. He's an intelligent player. And I think, he's just got all those attributes where he can pick up reads. We always knew he was going to pick up an NFL offense faster than most of these players because there is just something about his intelligence level. And I'm not saying the other guys are stupid, far from it, but just when you come from Alabama, you pick it up. Yeah.
You had Mac at 2. I presume you had Davis Mills at 1.
I had Davis Mills at 4, believe it or not.
Did you really?
Fair.
I really had Davis Mills at 4. I mean, obviously, I wouldn't have taken him in the first round if I'm the GM, but there was something about Davis Mills I just fell in love with. I watched his tape, I watched him play. Yeah, but his pro day was amazing. If you know what, if you can go and find it, go find Davis Mills.
That's what I thought about Lance's pro day. I was watching him throw balls, and I was like, man, some of these throws this guy's making.
Oh no, go and watch Davis Mills.
Now I'm going to
in the rain. Go and watch it in the rain. Brilliant. Yeah, I mean, I was Lawrence. So I weirdly had Lance at 5. I just didn't buy the whole. It's great. He played for North Dakota State. Yes, he's got all these amazing raw attributes, but the guy's not played anyone. He's not played anyone. For me, I don't like 1-year quarterbacks. I really don't like them. I don't like 1-year quarterbacks. It's the same way I felt about Dwayne Haskins. It's like, he threw 50 touchdowns at Ohio State. Great, he did it 1 year. Anybody can turn up for 1 year. Blake Bortles went to the AFC title game. I don't care.
Well, in all fairness, I mean, Josh Allen played in Wyoming, for God's sakes, and a lot of people said the same crap about him. But the thing was, you watch Josh Allen film and you go, well, you can't teach that.
No.
There's things that Josh Allen does that you can't teach. I can teach a guy to make better reads. I can teach a guy different wrinkles in offenses, all these things. Some of those things that Josh Allen does on a football field, you can't teach. And that's how I felt about Trey Lance, too. Sometimes you just watch it like, you can't teach that. That's just instincts and athleticism, and that combination when they come together is magical. But
Josh Allen did it longer. He did it longer. He did
it longer, but he also did it in Wyoming. Like, it wasn't like, it was
that football hotbed that it is.
It's not like you're doing it in the SEC. You know what I mean? Like, you're not doing, that's the only difference. He did do it longer. You're 100% right. But, COVID, I think, stole Trey Lance's season from him. And, I think he was smart to sit out because no good could have come from it.
True. Key predictions. I'll go then.
Yeah.
No, you go ahead.
While you're here, we've touched on the playoffs. Talk us through it a little bit, Joe. Where's it go? Who makes the show? How does it finish up for you?
Oh, man. I'm going to stick with Tampa. Don't tell Murf. Earmuffs, Murf. I'm going to stick with Tampa going all the way again. I feel like they're the best combination on offense and defense. And I think in terms of execution, and they have the guy to lead them. And I honestly think you're going to have Tampa go in there again to Green Bay. And I think you're going to have Tampa beat Green Bay. And at the end of the day, everyone's going to look at each other and it's the same old thing, which is Tom Brady, unfortunately, for the rest of the NFL, Tom Brady is just going to Tom Brady everybody. The guy has got over 5,000 yards passing. He leads the league in completions. He leads the league in attempts. He leads the league in yardage. He is 7th, I think, in quarterback rating or something like that. There's no words. And look, the defense has played better, and they've gotten a little healthy on the secondary. And I think at the end of the day, it's like, what's the best combination of coach and quarterback and all those things coming together? It's probably Tampa. The AFC, I think, is the Wild West. I think it's going to be Buffalo this year. I think Buffalo's had their hiccup. I think Buffalo has had their down point in the season. And I think they're starting to respond. And I think the thing with Buffalo is they're finally finding balance in the offense. Devin Singletary running the ball 20 times a game is the best thing that could have happened to Josh Allen in this offense because there's balance now. It's the things that the Chiefs still struggle with. They still struggle with it. And at the end of the day, I've always believed in the Buffalo secondary. I've always believed in their defense. Losing White was a big loss, but I still think at the end of the day, if you're asking me, like, I can't get behind the Titans. I want to. It's a good story. I can't do it. Kansas City just hasn't looked right to me all year. And typically the team that loses a Super Bowl typically gets, just kind of falls off there. I don't think it's New England. I'd love for it to be Cincinnati, but I have to be realistic, and I don't think it's the Raiders. So at the end of the day, I mean, who's left there? Not Pittsburgh. So I actually think Buffalo can beat. I think Buffalo and Tampa, and at the end of the day, it's another Tom Brady taking a young kid out back to the woodshed and teaching him a thing or two about football.
We'll take that right now, Murf. Yeah.
Yeah, Dan.
Lock it up. Call it though.
What are you predicting?
I I have a horse in the race, obviously, so it's a little bit more difficult.
I do too, but I got to put my horse to the side. I got to keep it real.
Your horse is on 3 legs and a little bit shorter than the others, so
that's a good point. That's a good point.
I actually do think the Titans having Henry potentially come back would do them some good, and I think you'll see potentially KC and Buffalo beat each other up a little bit in a week's time, potentially a week and a half's time. So I think the Titans will make the Super Bowl myself. The NFC, I'd love to see Tampa go and Green Bay and beat them again. I really think there's probably 3 or 4 teams in there that on their day. Tampa, I haven't really been playing well. I think they can play a lot better. I think last year we were hitting this stage of the season on form and things were starting to click and come back. It depends how quickly we can get these guys fit and healthy and up to speed as to how we roll. Super happy getting the 2nd seed, the potential other home game and the Eagles to start, because heading to Arizona or having San Francisco come to us as it looked at one stage would have been a far different outlook going into next week. So I'm going to stick my neck on the line. I'll go Tampa to do it again. They've got all the pieces there. They're set up for it. So I just hope we can get fit and healthy.
Wow.
And yourself?
So my preseason pick was a rematch, Kansas City versus Tampa, and I can't see it at this stage. I really don't want to get excited about Tampa. I really don't. But I think if we'd been the 3 or the 4 seed and had to have gone on the road to anywhere other than Green Bay, I'd be really nervous. I think if we had to go to LA, I wouldn't have fancied it, even though I know they're off the rails. We don't travel that well. We definitely don't do long distance that well.
Tommy loves the cold.
He does, but but LA's weird. Like I just feared us going to LA.
That's what feel good about Tom Brady and Green Bay in the middle of January. I feel good about it.
I got no problem. Yeah, it's just, and the Green Bay Packers always fold. They always fold in the NFC.
And the Packers will be favorites in that game. Mark it down.
Yeah, 100%.
They will be 3-point favorites in that game. I can't imagine them not being. I wouldn't think it would push more than 3 because it is Tom Brady, but they will be favorites in that game, and Tom Brady will take it personally. And every time Tom Brady takes something personally, we all know how that story ends.
Yeah. Well, he did it last year with 3 turnovers, and I can't see him giving up 3 turnovers again if he has to go there and do it all over again. So
I just look at that and I think with KC, I think it's going to be the winner. If Buffalo prevail this week, it will be the winner of that KC Buffalo game. And I just think, again, you talk about teams that have people's numbers. KC just seem to handle Buffalo.
They do.
They do seem to handle them, and I don't think they're going to be worried about the Titans. I don't think anyone's that worried about the Titans. You put Titans are a great story, as you say. To hold on to the 1 seed with no Derrick Henry for half a season. I mean, you talk about Mike Vrabel's got to win Coach of the Year for me. I don't even think it's close. I don't think you need to consider anybody else. I think you give it to Mike Vrabel for what he's done. But I just see Mahomes Brady 2. That's how I see it. I just think I can't look past it.
Who's winning though? Because you haven't put your neck on the line. This is what we're here for.
Ask me on Super Bowl Sunday, and I'll tell you.
Disappointing.
Always cagey. I just want the Bengals to win the whole damn thing because I just think it'd be fun, but it ain't happening.
I'd say that.
I'd be happy for the Bills to win it. I'd be happy for the Bengals to win it. I'd be happy for the Raiders to win it if the Bucs don't win it.
I gotta be honest, like all the AFC teams I feel are fun. I'm sure people will disagree with me. But even so, even the Patriots, this team is a little bit more likable than some of the other teams past. 100%. All the AFC teams I feel like are feel good stories. All the NFC teams, like people hate the Cowboys. People are sick of Brady. People hate Aaron Rodgers. People are annoyed with the Rams. People don't know who the Cardinals are. People are thinking about the 49ers are they really good enough to be there? And then the Eagles, I don't feel like there's one team on that NFC side that is like a feel-good story. I don't think. I just don't.
There isn't a feel-good story.
The AFC is one giant collective feel-good story. The NFC is like, ugh. It's like watching reruns. I feel like it's like roles reversed from like 5 years ago. The NFC was all fresh and all these cool characters coming up. Even the stupid Steelers weren't supposed to be there. Like, and they're like, oh, it's Roethlisberger's last ride, or look at the Raiders, isn't that cute? They got in the playoffs, how adorable. And look at the Patriots with their rookie quarterback, and Joe Burrow had knee surgery, and everybody likes Josh Allen, he's great, and Patrick Mahomes is the star, and the Titans didn't have Derrick Henry. What a good story. No narratives, none in the NFC. They all stink.
It's the guy that avoided COVID, the 44-year-old geriatric.
Right, exactly. It's the Cowboys, and people hate the Cowboys just on principle. Yeah. And the Eagles are, the Eagles. If you ask the national casual football fan to name 5 players on the Eagles, I bet you they can't.
No.
I bet you they can't.
I bet they couldn't even name the coach.
Probably not. Probably not. Just casual football fan. They'd be like, Hurts? And I mean, it's crazy. It's just crazy.
You have to give Nick Sirianni some credit because 100%. He laid the seeds and he put in the foundations, and then what he did is they built that up and they fed that plant, and it grew and it grew and it grew, and now the leaves are coming out.
You're getting very Jeff Goldblum on me here at the end.
I'm just using Nick Sirianni's press conference when he talked about flowers for 20 minutes.
I know. I remember it. It was good.
It did the job. Time too. We laughed, but it did the job.
I mean, I never thought Alan Titchmarsh would be a recognized thing in the US. Alan Titchmarsh, by the way, Joe, is a horticulturalist. He's a gardening guy on television over here.
Thank you. See, the more you know. It's always like coming on with you. I always feel like I leave a little smarter. That's why I like having you on too. And what a huge, I remember coming on with you a couple of years ago for the first time, and look, you have Scott Hansen doing the freaking opening of the show, and the bells and whistles and stuff you got now. It's amazing, man. Good on you. Look how far the show's come in just a couple of years. It's crazy.
And me.
I mean, Scott.
And Dan. Dan, obviously the biggest. I can't do the show without Dan.
Scott Hansen, what are you about? Jeez.
Yeah, I mean, who cares about that guy?
Scott was great. Yeah, he was on a couple of years ago, and I asked him would he do an intro, and he went, "Yeah, sure." And then I gave him the lines. He's
Murf
like, "Don't
can
worry,
get anybody to do anything." I swear to God, like Murf can ask somebody. People are like, "Yeah, sure, it's amazing. I don't know how you do it, man." No, they don't come on with me. And no one will come on with me.
It's only because I'm English. It's not because
novelty. So if I start asking people on Fantasy Pros that are like, "Excuse me, Mr. Belichick, just sort of, I was wondering if perhaps maybe you'd like to come on the show. Just talk a little football, just a little bit. Just a
very good accent.
I did live there for a bit, so I could possibly do it. But no, I mean seriously, I can't get away with that. It's my new tactic. I'm going to steal it from you now, Murf.
Do it, 100%.
It works, and if it works, then they come on the show with me and they say, "What happened to your accent?"
Oh man. He's no better English than I did, so
I'll have to do the whole show in an accent. That'd be hilarious.
Oh my god, that'd be so great.
Welcome in everyone to Fantasy Pros. This is me, Joe Pisapia, talking football with you all for the next hour and a half, sorting through all your rankings and your podcasts and all sorts of things like that nature. It's Kyle Yates, some other jabroni going to talk to me now. We're going to talk football for the next hour.
Do you know what you should do the next time you do a pod with Yates? Just start talking.
Write it in. Don't mention it. Yeah.
I bet Yates you just get this look on his face. I should do that just as a prank one day.
I tell you now what will happen. Yates won't notice for the first 2 minutes.
Probably not.
Because he'll be so focused, and he's not looking, and he's so focused on what he's going to say, and then he'll hear it and he'll go, "What the heck?
What are you doing? What's wrong with you?" Next time I have you on, I think that'll be the plan. We'll do that together. Just prank him, just to see.
Oh my god, he'd be so confused. It's like, what's going on? There's British everywhere. It's spreading. It's like it's the new COVID.
What are you talking about, Yates? We all sound the same. What's the problem?
So while we are here, we've talked NFL, we've talked football, we've talked playoffs. Let's have a quick look back, if we can, then about the fantasy season, Joe. That's what you're here for. So, let's have a little look if we can. So we're going to have a look at maybe some of the player that you were higher on than consensus that was a success.
Let's see.
Found deep in the doldrums.
Well, I wish I had kept the shares of Amon-Ra St. Brown that I had drafted, but I had to let them all go because, I needed players that are actually playing and doing something in the first 6 weeks of the season. He wasn't. So that was one, and that worked out well for other people, not so much for me. Jalen Waddle was on all 3 of the rosters I had that went to the championship. I mean, he was so much Jalen Waddle I had, and I was so happy because he absolutely hit. And then I guess on the inverse of that, players that I was right to fade away from that top grouping. Ezekiel Elliott, I know he's RB6, but he's RB6, circumstantially, because the rest of the running back position fell apart. If you felt good about Ezekiel Elliott in here in the last 6 weeks, then I have to ask you why. I mean, just why? It's just not good. All those touchdowns, it saved him. That's it. Yeah. So that I was certainly, I had 0 shares of Zeke, I think, this year, and that worked out pretty well.
Yeah. What about yourself, Murf? Any success stories you found deep down, or anybody you missed that he was right to?
I mean, Tom Brady. Felt very good fading. I mean, I took some Allen in places, but where Allen was just going a little bit too high. All those teams had Brady. Brady I smashed, absolutely smashed. I think in so many rosters, he was in most of my championship rosters, and he delivered. In fact, he delivered more than I thought he would. So I was more than delighted. So I think he was a big win for me. I think I had him at 4 on my QB rankings at the beginning of the year, and people thought it was a bit nuts. So I'm quite happy to be proven right. And then Mike Evans as well, not just to stick with Bucks themes, but I felt he would be good enough to get up there. Jalen Waddle was another one as well. I had Michael Pittman. Deontay Johnson was another big one. So Deontay Johnson, everyone was trying to convince me that it was Claypool over Johnson. I was Johnson over Claypool all day long. Remember going on with Justin Boone, and we ended up having an argument on his show about it. And I was like, no, I just don't want any part of Claypool. If I can get Deontay Johnson 2 rounds, and the other one was Lockett over DK Metcalf. As I said to people that Lockett is going to be DK Metcalf, but you get him 4 rounds later. Like, if you want that player, just go and draft the one that's 4 rounds later. And I don't know who. I think maybe Metcalf finished just above Lockett, but I think it was 3 points, 3 or 4 points. It wasn't a lot. And it was only because DK smashed it in.
Yeah,
week
30
17.
points in week 17. Yeah.
So I mean, you look at it and go, yeah, they were the same player. I thought they'd come out be very similar again. So they were the ones I was definitely higher on than consensus and smashed it. And Brandon Cooks is another one as well. There's another one I smashed everywhere because he was just so cheap.
What about someone that you faded and rightly so, and it worked out okay not to pick up shares?
For me, someone that I was. Murf, are you going back to Murf for the fade, right?
Either or. Fire away, Joe. You're off from
Wait. I forget which one we're on. Do you want me to pick somebody that I faded that was right or wrong or whatever?
Right. Someone you faded and you're pleased you did fade.
I already talked about Zeke, so let Murf talk about something.
You did, yeah.
I can talk about guys I faded that I was wrong, too. Oh, boy.
I've got a long list of them.
Not too long. Just 1 or 2 guys that I was out. And you know what? I should have been in, so it's fair.
We'll get to them then. Go on, Murf. Who did you fade successfully?
Murf is researching. I could see him looking.
No, I'm just putting out finishes.
Like, I wasn't, I was right about everything, Murf.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of players I faded. I mean, Myles Gaskin. I just never liked that situation. That was one, but not a big win there. I guess Nick Chubb. I mean, he wasn't bad, but just at the price, I didn't like it. Calvin Ridley. I mean, I don't want to really take a victory lap on that one for what's happened, but I just didn't really want parts of that Falcons offense. The same reason I faded Kyle Pitts. I just never believed you'd ever get your return on him.
Well, you were wrong on that one. He's tight end 5.
Well, yeah, but he didn't produce anything that was.
Okay, it's tight end 5.
Yeah,
tight end 5 is tight end 5.
Yeah, great. But it's what? How many points was he from tight end 12? Not many.
Not many, but tight end 5 is tight end. 1,000-yard rookie tight end season is pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine.
Well,
Did you see the PFF expected touchdown total was 6 for him, and he had 1.
Well, yeah, I didn't back Matt Ryan. That's why.
I saw it as well. I saw it. I saw his one. There you go. Claim to fame in person.
Yeah, there you go. You should travel with the team.
It was in London, wasn't
it? Yeah,
fine.
Yeah. So Tom Brady's ruined my reason I should move to Florida again because all Florida teams stunk when I left and I hadn't won anything. And then Tom Brady comes to town and Florida teams win everything. He's killed my tourist board application.
Fair. Joe, let's flip that now then if we can. So who was you high on and drafting, and sadly you have now a bucket load sat on the side and you can't do nothing with?
I was super high on CeeDee Lamb, and it wasn't as good as it should have been. I'll just come out there and say it. Like there were players that I overranked. Like Najee Harris, I had as a top 5 running back going into the season, and he finished that way. And then there were players that I thought were going to be in that like top 5 conversation. I thought Lamb was poised to make that jump, and it just didn't happen. Prescott had some missed time. Lamb had some missed time. It's too many other options in the offense. I don't know. For whatever reason, it just didn't happen. It might happen next year, but it was disappointing. It's the first time in a while where, I targeted that kind of wide receiver and it wasn't correct. So that one stung a little bit for sure.
Fair. Murf, yourself, same question?
David Montgomery, although the redeeming factor was the teams that I held David Montgomery because I couldn't drop him. He did me very well over the last couple of weeks to win me ships, but I far predicted him to be, I thought he'd be sort of top 12, pushing top 10. It didn't happen. James Robinson, he was a late bloomer on boards, but again, I thought he would be a bit better, injury, whatever. Robert Woods, again, injury, but he was one I had on so many teams, and that didn't happen. I don't think he would have reached the heights I kind of projected. I advocated for Robbie Anderson absolutely everywhere, and that blew up in my face horrifically. I think they were like the main one, and then Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown was another one. I just thought he'd eat more into. I thought he'd eat a lot more into Godwin's share.
Well, he would have had he not been eating crazy pills.
Yeah, you should always just stay away from those sorts of players.
It's so bad. It's so tempting though because he's so good. He's so talented. When he's on the field, it's unbelievable. He could roll out of bed, not play in 6 weeks, and catch 12 balls for 140 and a touchdown. It's crazy. But you're right. You just can't depend on him. There's no stability there. Yeah, I think it's done now. I think it's over.
Yeah.
And now you're worse on then, Joe. Who are those players that you weren't drafting, you was avoiding no matter what, and you got it wrong?
Well, the biggest one I think for me is I was out on Jalen Hurts. I did not, in single quarterback leagues, I was very much out. And I think if you went to that strategy of having Jalen Hurts and then like a fringy Kirk Cousins guy, I think that worked out pretty well for you because you're able to put a lot of capital in other guys. So that was the one guy. And Superflex, I was more willing to take that chance. But not in the redraft regular old single quarterback leagues. And look, the guy produced, so I got to give it up to him. He absolutely did.
Fair. Murph, yourself?
Jonathan Taylor. I just didn't like that.
That's got to hurt bad.
Yeah.
You weren't the only one. Tags didn't like him either.
No,
Tags
I know.
Was very worried about Jonathan Taylor.
It wasn't the fact that it wasn't him. It was everything else that. Yeah. It was just everything that went with him. It was the coach. It wasn't the talent. I just didn't think he'd get all the ball. That's all it was. I just didn't think he'd get all the share. I did not believe Frank Reich, coming from the Doug Pederson tree where they split the carries and Naheem Hines was going to be a bigger thing, and that was it. I just thought I didn't mind him on the turn on that, but he was never making the turn. So that was a big one for me. And then the only other ones really, I guess, Chase was one. I sprinkled.
Big one.
Yeah, I sprinkled.
I scooped up all the Chase late.
I drafted no Chase.
Oh,
no Chase.
When he started dropping balls and complaining that he didn't have a stripe on it, and people stopped drafting him, I drafted all the Chase. It was so good.
when his price went down, I definitely made the most of it. But he was one, and then Debo, never touched Debo. I don't think I got him on any teams.
I'm glad you brought that up because Debo's the guy that I love every year, and this year I was like, stop drafting him. He's always hurt. You idiot. Stop doing it. And of course, he ended up being great. So there you have it.
Fair. Well, Debo's someone I was very high on. I can see that, Harry. I love Debo. Drafted a lot of Debo. Very pleased I did. Player in a similar situation that I guess I missed on was Colton Sutton. I thought he'd come back from the injury a bit like Debo has done and produce, and sadly hasn't. So success and non-success stories there then, I guess. Joe, just before we're done, can you tell people where we can find some more of your articles, what you're writing, what you're working on at the minute?
It's so much easier to not find me. So just, You could always find me on Twitter at Joe Pisapia 17. You could find me hosting the Fantasy Pros podcast. We got a lot of cool content still coming for football. We got draft content. We got betting pros. We got baseball content. And, of course, the
British
Fantasy
accent
Football Black
soon.
Book. British accent anytime you want. Any other accent. And then you got June 1st, the Football Black Book will be out. And the Baseball Black Book's out right now. And it's always great to hang out with you guys and talk football. Thanks for having me today.
Well, thanks for coming on as always. Love having you on. Love talking to you. We talk quite a bit when it's probably more out season than in season because it just gets so busy. But I'm excited for the Black Book when it comes out. We'll get you on before then. Oh, yeah, before then. We'll do some promotions. You've got my Black Books are all up here.
Look at you. You're my favorite, Murf.
I can't wait until we can eventually hang out and get them signed.
Oh, I cannot wait, man. Someday.
It's going to happen.
Damn that COVID. We got to, maybe this summer. We'll see.
We've got to write that wrong, 100%. But no, it's been amazing. Oh, look, and someone else has appreciated it. It's a good show. So it's always a good show when Joe's on. Follow Joe everywhere. Yeah. He's a great follow. Definitely check out the Fantasy Pros podcast everywhere. Available everywhere. Definitely join in. It's a phenomenal show. And just because it's the off season doesn't mean you shouldn't hit the subscribe button, because you should follow the Fantasy Pros podcast and us, because we're going to break down 2021. We're going to get you smarter. And if you missed out on those ships, we're going to make sure you win them in 2022.
We are. Guys, that for me just about wraps it up then. Anything you wish to add?
No, just, the other thing is we're doing our Super Bowl meetup.
We are.
So just make sure you check that out. We're partnered with the Warrior Bowl guys. So do check that out. There are some prizes for those who buy tickets, some signed merch prizes. I'll tease it. I'm not going to say more than that, but there will be raffle tickets as a result of you buying it. All proceeds go to charity, but have an opportunity to hang up with people in London. It's at the Redwood. So check out the pin tweet on Warrior Bowl's page and you'll be able to find it there.
Super. In that case, then, guys, week 18 is been and gone for the first time, the second time, I guess. There was that odd year way back, but playoffs are upon us. Best of luck. Joe, thank you for your time. Murf, thank you for your time. And Murf, finishes off.
Don't forget, as always, keep rushing.